Welcome to Secret Story. I was still clothed, so I left without a word and took a drive that I stopped at the local watering hole, ordered a beer, and watched the end of the NFL game. About 30 minutes after I got there, the text messages between the lovers started flying. Karen's text, "God Joe, he knows." Joe's text, "How could he know?" Karen's text, "When I came home, Jason was sleeping, so I cleaned up and douched so I was totally clean, just in case he wanted to go to with me." Karen's text, "I almost fainted when he said I was creamy and tasted tart and tangy with a hint of salt. Oh, he knows." Joe's text, "Oh, what are you going to do?" Karen's text, "Me, no Joe, it's we." There was no response. Karen's text, "Don't you dare abandon me now. Joe." There was no response. It was quiet for a while. I got a text from Wilson. Wilson's text, "Karen is on the move." My text, "Okay, thanks, how about Joe?" Wilson's text, "I'll check." I looked at the auto tracker and saw that Karen had pulled into the mall Hilton garage. That I watched the game for 5 more minutes until I got a text from Wilson. Wilson's text, "Joe checked out." My text, "Thanks. Can you send me the final report, and we are done?" Wilson's text, "Yes, so sorry, I wish you luck." I sat for a while, thinking about what I wanted to do. I know that I said that at 11:15 a.m. I stopped loving my wife. Well, that was not 100% true. I still love Karen and always will. She is learning a hard lesson right now. And I am going to make sure it will be as painful as I can, but in the end, I want to make us work. I text Karen. My text, "You, okay?" No response. I waited 30 minutes before I texted again. My text, "Karen, answer me. Are you okay?" Karen's text, "Yes and no." My text, "I'm coming home. We need to talk." Karen's text, "Okay." My text, "Open a bottle of white wine, go into the office, and wait for me." Karen's text, "Okay." I finished my beer, finalizing my plan. I pulled into the garage. I walked past Karen's car and felt her hood, confirming she had gone out trying to see Joe. That failed because the low life abandoned her and ran home. I got a text from Wilson confirming that Joe had gotten on a flight to Dallas right after he left the hotel. I went into my workshop, got the box off the top shelf, and entered the house. It was silent, no noise. I carried the box to our bathroom and opened the hamper. I dug further and found Karen's jeans from Friday night. They were crusty like the others in the box. I added them to my collection. I walked down the steps, making sure my efforts were loud like the Grim Reaper was coming. I walked into the office. Karen was sitting curled up in the far corner of the couch. I put the box on the floor beside me. I opened my computer and brought up all the reports and video files. I turned to Karen. She was shaking in fear. Her cheeks were tear-stained, and her breathing was shallow. "So, tell me. Karen, is there anything I should know, or you want to tell me?" I asked calmly. Karen started to cry again, and she was shaking badly. I was concerned for her as raw fear overtook her. "Karen, calm down, get hold of yourself," I stated. Karen took a deep breath and settled down a little. I was sure she would be going through this again, probably more than once. Before I was through with her, I picked up the box and opened it. I laid them on the floor in front of her. Karen's eyes went wide open with horror. Then I reached into the box and brought out the jeans she had worn the same night. Karen's eyes were spilling tears now like a river flowing from each eye. Her breathing was halted with short breaths. I reached into the box and brought out the jeans from Friday night, encrusted with the same mixture. They were still a little damp 2 days later. I lay them down with the other evidence. Karen had covered her eyes, not wanting to look. "Uncover your eyes, Karen. You must see your sins clearly," I stated firmly as she dropped her hands to her lap. I reached into the box for the last time and pulled out the white pant Karen wore when she went to Joe this morning. I laid them next to the others on the floor. "Karen, come here," I demanded. She moved beside me and looked up at me. Get down on your knees. I commanded. Karen was shaking as she kneeled in front of the row of her soiled clothes. I took the wine bottle and my glass and sat across from her in my chair. Now Karen, you need to listen very carefully. You have one opportunity right now to save our marriage if that is what you want. The only way that can happen is for you to tell the 100% truth. Karen, you are the only one that can save our marriage. I cannot save our marriage, nor will I even try. Only you can do that. Do you understand, Karen? Karen looked at me, taking a deep breath. She squeezed her hands together, nodded, and said, "Yes, I understand." Good. We are not moving from this room until you tell me about every interaction, every detail of every liaison you have had with Joseph Long and any other man you have go since we have been married. I want 100% of everything. I stated firmly. Depending on how many liaisons there have been will determine how long you are on your knees telling me about all. Karen began to cry again, injured by my words. Karen, calm down and get started. I said firmly that I got up and moved the tripod for my cell phone so I could record all of what she confessed. Once it was set up, I swallowed a full glass of wine. Karen looked shocked. What is that for? She asked. Oh, I want a full recording, documenting everything you say. I want to keep it so we can always look back at it if we need or want to. No, Jason, I don't want it recorded. Karen said, panicking that I stood up, picked up the wine bottle, and walked to the door. Jason, where are you going? Karen yelled that I stopped, turned, and looked down at her. Karen, if you refuse to do anything I request, I will walk out and never return. Do you understand? Karen looked defeated as she nodded. Okay, come back. You can record it. No, you have to say it. I demanded. Karen looked up at me. She was a broken woman and said, yes, Jason, I understand. I sat back down and looked at her. Karen, you hold no status in this house right now. The day you decided to cheat on me, you lost all status in this house. Unfortunately, I did not find out early enough to stop you until now. While in this house, you will do what I tell you to do and only what I tell you to do until you have earned your status again. I will determine when that is and what your status is. But until then, you do nothing outside this house without my permission. I will know where you are going, with whom, and how long you will be there. Do you understand? Karen's eyes teared again as she said weakly, yes, I understand. I hope this is a short video, but I am afraid it may not be. Let's get started, I said as I pressed record. Karen, we have been married 11 years next month. Why did you decide to cheat on me? I do not understand. But now you must tell me about all the times you cheated. So, Karen, when was the first time you cheated on me? I asked as my eyes bore a hole in her. Karen looked down. Karen, look at me. I need to see your face to tell if you are lying to me. Karen looked up at me. My words hurt her. She took a deep breath and started. It was about a year ago and was completely spontaneous. Do you remember when the girls and I went to that Jason Aldean concert in Austin for the weekend? 2 of the single girls hooked up with these guys, and we all ended up drunk in the guys' hotel room playing Truth or Dare. Things got out of control, and I was dared to this guys for 30 seconds. I was drunk and did it that we went around the room again. We were all taking tequila shots. When the same guy, Luke's turn, came up, he dared me to take off my top. I looked around, seeing Jesse, so I just did it. By the time it was my turn again, I was getting drunk and was just into the game, not thinking of anything else, just like everybody was. It all seemed so innocent at the moment. He just stood there, and I couldn't take my eyes off it. The whole room went silent as I leaned forward. Then I thought about what I had just done and almost vomited again. I washed out my mouth and washed my face. Ellen came into the bathroom with my top. I put it on, and the 2 of us left and caught a cab to our hotel. I was a wreck the rest of the weekend and didn't go out at all. I stayed in the room and cried almost the whole time. I had no idea how I could face you after that. I knew I needed to tell you. But I was so scared you would throw me out that I couldn't talk to you about it. The girls convinced me not to tell you and that I would get over it in a few days once I was home with you. That is pretty much what happened. I was so happy to be back with you and that the nightmare was behind me. I blocked it out and moved on. It was never mentioned again by anyone. Karen looked at me as tears rolled down her cheeks, begging my forgiveness. Jason, it meant nothing. It was a stupid, irresponsible, drunken mistake. I am so sorry it happened. Please forgive me. I sat looking at my wife. I was shocked and disgusted. How could she? I stood, stopped the recording, and left the room without speaking. I went outside and walked around the backyard, thinking. I remembered that weekend and that things were a little weird for a few weeks after that, but I was so busy at work and had a short business trip that I didn't see anything was wrong. My bad. I returned inside, got another beer, walked back into the office, and sat down. Karen looked relieved that I had come back but was still petrified. I made no reference to her previous confession that I pressed record. So, Karen, when did you cheat on me next? I asked calmly. Karen looked down again, then looked up at me with pleading eyes. She took a deep breath. 5 weeks ago, we were on a girls' night out, dinner, then dancing at Tommy's Roadhouse. We were dancing normally with various guys when Joe came up and asked me to dance. It was just as innocent as all my other dances until we had danced 3 dances, 2 of which had been slow numbers. After the last song ended, Joe invited me to his table for a drink. I thought nothing of it. I did that with other guys to rest, between dances, and we talked. Joe asked if he could order a special cocktail for me, so I thought, you're paying, so why not? June came over, and Joe ordered a Cosmo. I had heard of the drink, but I drink wine, so I had never had one before. The drinks came, and the Cosmo tasted good and was easy to drink. I had one, then another, as we talked. He was a nice guy and was interesting to listen to. We danced a couple more dances, and when we returned to the table, there was another Cosmo. I was feeling no pain and needed something wet, so I drank it. Another slow song came on, and we danced again. This dance was different. The drink started hitting me harder, and Joe became more aggressive. The dance floor was crowded, so we bumped into people the whole time. He pulled me tight against him, and I melted into him as the dance continued. He was comfortable to dance with, so I laid my head on his shoulder, and he pulled me tighter to him. As the dance went on, I got more comfortable, and the drinks hit me harder, and the next thing I knew, Joe was kissing me. I knew I should stop it. But I was almost defenseless, so I let him kiss me. The song was over, and we walked back to the table. As I sat down, June showed up with another Cosmo. Suddenly, my mind was running wild. I was turned on and didn't know how to stop what I was doing. I drank the Cosmo to cool off and settle down. Joe was looking at me with these bedroom eyes in such a way that it scared me, so I decided I needed to go to the ladies' room to take a break from Joe and catch up on what the other girls were doing. I walked to the bathroom, peed, washed my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. I knew this was dangerous, and I needed to break this off and go back to the girls. I decided that was what I was going to do. Just as I left the ladies' room, Joe met me in the hallway. He pulled me into the men's room and closed the door, bolting it. There was nobody else in there. I pushed him away. I probably didn't try hard enough. Then, suddenly, my brain kicked in, and I tried to push him away. No, stop Joe, stop, I'm married, I can't do this. It's not right, I begged. Baby, nobody will ever know. Your husband will never know unless you tell him, and you won't do that, so let's have a little fun. Joe reasoned. No, Joe, I can't. It's just not right. I can't cheat on my husband. I begged him again, trying to push him away, then in a last effort, and I was his. I was way past the point of no return. God. I was so embarrassed and ashamed when I came to my senses and realized what had happened. I slapped him and pushed him away. As I left the bathroom, I told Joe, never speak to me again. I slammed the door as I walked out, almost running to find the other girls, telling them we needed to leave. They were ready to go anyway, so we left, and I came home. When I got home, you were asleep, so I went into the bathroom, quickly showered, and cried. I dried off, put on a nightgown, and crawled into bed. I lay there for probably an hour, agonizing over what I'd done and not knowing how to deal with it. I remembered the first time it happened and how I had buried that night deep in my mind. Things seemed to go okay after that, and what I had done didn't eat at me like I thought it would. That was a little thrilling, but no, it wasn't very pleasant. I finally fell asleep. The next day, we had a wonderful day together. It was wonderful. I felt like I was over what happened and didn't think about it again until we girls went dancing again 2 weeks later. Stop. I demanded that I stood up and pressed stop on the video. I looked down at Karen. She looked like a beaten woman, admitting that she had cheated on me. I saw remorse in her face and the pain in her eyes. I went out to catch my breath and get another beer. I walked outside again and breathed deeply to get some fresh air. I poured Karen a glass of wine. I walked back in and gave her the glass. Okay, Karen, tell me more. I pressed, recorded on my phone, sat down, sipped my beer, and sat back, waiting for the next chapter. Okay, Jason, a week went by, and I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Strange text. Hey, it's Joe. I'm in town this weekend working in my new office. Are you coming to dance on Friday night? Oh, it was Joe, so I texted him. Karen's text, how did you get my number? No, I don't want to talk to you or see you. What we did was so very wrong. I can't let it happen again. Joe's text, I'm sorry, it was just in the moment. It won't happen again. I like you and like dancing with you. Karen's text, I don't know where we will dance this week. It could be there, but it could be somewhere else. If you see me, but nothing can happen, understand? Joe's text, I understand. Let's dance and have some fun. See you there. I called Ellen, and she said we would go to Tommy's after dinner. I didn't tell Joe. I didn't want him looking for me. I didn't want to see him. The girls and I had a nice dinner, with a lot of gossip and the normal stuff. Then we headed over to Tommy's. I drove one car. I wasn't planning on drinking much, so I felt I would be good as the designated driver. Ellen had a van, so she also drove, taking the other girls. When we arrived, we found a table off to the side in the corner. Everybody knew about Joe, not what we had done, but they knew he was after me, so they wanted to protect me. A few men asked me to dance, and they were all gentlemen. Ian was a really good dancer. Joe tapped Ian's shoulder as we danced our third dance and broke in. I was taken aback at Joe's forwardness, but that's what happens on the dance floor at this club, so there really wasn't anything to do, so we finished the dance. Afterward, Joe asked me to come to his table. I refused and went back to my table. Joe followed me, trying to get me to his table. Ellen stood up and looked Joe straight in the face. Joe, leave Karen alone. She is married, so leave her alone. Joe walked away, and I sat at the table for a long time. June showed up with a new Cosmo. I was thirsty and nervous, so I drank it. It didn't have much effect on me, so I ordered a second one because I liked the taste. Then another gentleman, Alex, came and asked me to dance. We danced a couple of dances, and then once again, Joe showed up and broke in during a slow dance. I realized the Cosmos were kicking in, and I was responding to Joe. That was scary, so I broke away from Joe after that song and told him I needed to sit with my girls and talk to them. He walked away back to his table. As we were having a nice talk, Jessie received a text from her husband asking if she could come home because one of the kids had gotten sick. Ellen asked me, can you take the other girls home? The other girls all said they would go with her now, so we don't have to stay. They all looked at me and asked, do you want to go? I thought for a second, looked at the Cosmo sitting before me, and told them I would stay for a while and go home later. If anybody wanted to stay with me, I would take them home. All the other girls decided to leave, so I was by myself. Joe was on the watch for me, so as soon as they all left and I was alone, Joe moved over to my table. Did the other girls leave you? Joe asked. No, one girl's kid got sick, and the others just decided to go with her. How are you getting home? Joe asked. I have my car. If we stayed late, I was the designated driver, but I'm alone now since everybody's gone. I can't drink much more, so I can drive home. Joe looked at me and asked, can we dance then for the next hour? We danced to every dance, slow songs, and a few fast ones. I was worn out when we sat down, and I had another Cosmo and another dot. We moved to a booth, and Joe slipped in next to me. It felt so good. The alcohol started taking effect, so I laid my head on his shoulder. I quickly realized that that was a big mistake. I knew this was not good and was heading in the wrong direction, but I was so horny I didn't care anymore. We danced the next dance and walked back to the booth when it was over. I looked Joe in the eyes and whispered, Joe, you need to take me somewhere. I want you to me. Joe was shocked but stood up and pulled me out of the booth without a pause. I gathered my things, and we went to my car. I drove us to his hotel. Inside, we went to his room, and as soon as the door closed, we were all over each other. Our clothes were falling off, and the next thing we rested for a while. I was so excited right after. For the next half hour, we like animals. Joe was on top of me. I looked at the clock. It was 10 p.m. I wanted Joe again but knew we didn't have much time. I did know you would be asleep when I got home, so we did have more time, and we could again. We rested again, and I looked at the clock. It was almost 11 p.m. and Joe asked, can I see you again? I didn't know. I told him, Jason. It was at that moment that I realized what I was doing. I suddenly felt sick and knew I could not do it again. I leaped out of bed, dressed quickly, and left without another word or answering his question. That I cried as I drove home, knowing I had destroyed our marriage and not knowing how I could have done what I did. When I got home, thank God you were asleep. I took a deep breath. I had to clean for you. You deserved me after what I had just done, but I didn't deserve you. I was restless thinking about how I betrayed you, so I didn't sleep much. Even more disturbing was that I had dreams about Joe and our night together. I knew that was so wrong but could not control it. Jason, I tried hard the next morning to be normal. I was your loving wife, and that is what you saw, but inside, wife who had betrayed our marriage vows and didn't deserve you. So, that brings us to this weekend. I went out with the girls on Friday for dinner and dancing. Joe was at Tommy's, and he knew I would be there. We arranged a quick escape. The girls all knew what was going on, but they didn't say anything. Once home, I quietly walked into the bedroom and saw you sleeping. I dried. I didn't sleep at all that night. My guilt level was off the charts. But I tried to push it back in my head. I did not know how to deal with what was building up inside me. This thing with Joe was becoming a big problem. And I knew I had to stop it. Jason, I never intended to cheat on you to begin with. I thought dancing and flirting was just fun and didn't mean anything. But as my time with Joe has increased, I have cheated multiple times. It is now out of control and has turned into an ugly thing that will destroy us if I haven't already. I have to stop it. Then Saturday came, and I sensed something was happening with you. It scared me that you might know something. I couldn't tell what was on your mind, but you were strange that morning. Even when you went to play golf and left me a note, there was just something about it. I didn't know if it was my feeling guilty, or I was misreading you and making something out of nothing. Or you did know what I had been doing, but you were normal that night as we went out for our date night. I was excited. I hoped we would have a wonderful time together, then come home, and you would love me passionately. Jason, we had a wonderful dinner, but then you decided to take me to Tommy's. That created a big problem for me. I knew that Joe was in town, and he would probably be there. I was so afraid my life would explode in the club. I could not let you guys meet, and I didn't want to be in the same room with you and him. I would die. When we arrived, and the bouncer called my name, I had a bad feeling about how the night would go. When we got inside, I didn't see Joe anywhere. So I felt good that maybe we could have a good night with no interruptions so we could dance. But my relationships with all the guys I had danced with made a mess of our night. The guys I had danced with the other nights started to cut in, and you, like a gentleman, let them dance with me. I knew that upset you. I enjoy dancing with you and want to dance with them because they're particularly good dancers, Jason. It is not that you're not a good dancer, but they dance all the time, so they have mastered the art. You don't dance often, so you are not as good as they are. You didn't seem to mind much, so I danced with them. But when Joe broke in, that was the beginning of a big problem for me. When I danced with Joe, I told him that this was the end, that what we had done was so bad and dangerous. After that dance, I knew you were upset when I returned to the table. You didn't know who Joe was, but you knew I danced with that man several times as I had with other guys. I did not dance, but I did a few dances with you. Jason, that was not how the night was supposed to go, and you were definitely upset, Jason. Then you made that strange offer to let me stay and dance with these other men if I wanted to. I didn't even take time to ask myself why you would do that. Your statement offended me badly. Why would you even offer that to me? Then you just walked off expecting me to stay. You didn't say a word when I ran after and caught you. When we got in the car, you drove off, and there was no talking. I knew you were truly angry. I was also angry at the statement that you made. I didn't understand it, and it was disrespectful to me. When we got home, I went inside. I was angry and wanted to know what was happening and why you would treat me like that. I got a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table, expecting you to enter. I waited a long time for you, but I'm unsure why you took so long to come in. Then, when you did come in, you had a terrible look on your face, so I broached the subject of your comment. We argued, and that's when you made it clear that you were not sleeping with me that night. But you were emphatic that you were going to sleep in the guest room, which really upset me. I was not so upset with you because of your decision. I was upset because I knew it was me who created this nasty beast, and I was the one who had to deal with it. The problem was I did not know how that I went to my room and decided we would deal with it tomorrow. I didn't sleep well at all. I was very worried that I had made a fatal mistake in our marriage and lost you. The following morning, I decided to make a nice breakfast that we could eat together, and maybe we could talk through this mess I had created, but the morning didn't go well at all. I expected we would talk and begin to resolve things. But then I got angry. You didn't know at that point, but I had texted Joe. He texted me back, trying to console me, and asked me to come to see him. I really didn't want to do that, but I needed to talk to somebody, and you wouldn't talk to me. So, in anger, I made up my mind to see Joe. I knew what would probably happen, but at that point, I was so confused and afraid that our life together was over. Depression crept in, and I was very worried. I hoped Joe could help me get through this mess, but when I arrived at Joe's hotel room, Joe was on me. I wanted to talk, but Joe didn't want to console me. That was the damn problem that created this mess, but Joe didn't care. All he wanted was to me. Jason, I was angry at you, angry at myself, and angry at Joe. I knew I had to leave and could never see Joe again. Jason, I had to find a way to beg your forgiveness and pray you didn't throw me out into the gutter. That I quickly walked out of the bathroom, dressed, and left, never looking at Joe. Joe saw me and asked, "Where are you going, Karen?" I ignored Joe and walked out, planning never to see him again. When I got home, you weren't there. That scared me, so I decided to go ahead and start dinner. I hoped you would be home soon. I chose not to text you and told you that you would come home when you were ready to talk to me. It was an hour later when you came home. I was cooking when you slipped up behind me and hugged me. You spun me around, looked into my eyes, and kissed me passionately. That was something that hadn't happened in a while. I melted into you, Jason. You did something that you know I love. My problem was for the last 2 hours. I wasn't sure I had cleaned myself enough. Could you smell him, taste him? I was so afraid, but then you did something that I thought was strange. I probably should have picked up on the comment, but I was in such ecstasy that I didn't pick up on your words. Baby, you taste a little different, saltier and creamier than normal. I almost panicked. I didn't want to taste it. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to crawl under something and die. I pushed you away and curled up, starting to cry. God, that was a strong signal to you that something was happening if you didn't already know it. I was sure you had learned something new. You left me there, and Jason, you know what happened after that. Karen, tell me what happened when you got to Joe's room. I want all the details. Karen looked at me, horrified. What do you want to know? Every detail. The talking, everything, don't leave out anything. Why does any of that matter? Karen pleaded. I want to know it all. What you said, what Joe said, and everything you two did. It's part of the deal you agreed to, so tell me all of it now. Karen looked at me with pain on her face. She didn't want to relive today again and certainly didn't want to tell me all the details, but she knew she had to say to me. Okay, if that is what you want. When I got there, Joe was waiting. He was concerned that you may know about us. He really didn't think you knew, and I was overreacting. Karen, Jason doesn't know, or he would be after me and kick you out. Don't worry about it. We are still good, so come on, baby. Come on, let's have some fun, then you can go home to your husband. Joe said. Joe took me in his arms and hugged. Like every other time we have been together, he only wanted to me. Jason, I admit that I wanted it too, but I knew it would have to be the last time. I pushed Joe away and made him sit and talk about the situation. The question of whether or not you did or didn't know anything and what the ramifications might be was discussed, and Joe convinced me that you knew nothing. Then he held me tight. No further words were spoken. All the other problems melted away, and we were lovers again for the next 2 hours. You want to know the details of what we did to each other. I cannot give you those details. I know Joe could not either. I knew this was the last time, but Joe did not. Then I left Joe for the last time, lying on the bed begging me to stay and telling me nothing would happen. I knew he was wrong. The fear that was slowly consuming my body was almost overpowering. I had a tough time focusing as I drove home. When I arrived home, I was terrified, and you know what happened after that. So, Karen, that's it. Those were the only times you've ever cheated on me. Yes, Jason, Joe was the only man, and you know all the times it happened. Today was the last time. I will never cheat on you again. That is my solemn promise that I will never break. I laughed. Karen, why should I believe that? We've been married for 15 years, and 15 years ago, on our wedding day, we both took vows that we would never cheat on each other and forsake all others before then. It was for eternity, not 15 years and 3 months. It seems to me that you erased that vow from your mind and now would be free to cheat whenever you feel like it. You have lost all your values, so they must not mean anything to you now. So, what about the rest of those values that you vowed to, like standing by me through thick and thin till death do us part? You know, all those other things you committed to the day we married, in front of God and our family and friends. Do any of them matter anymore? My faith in anything you say right now has worn pretty thin. Karen was crying now. Part 3 coming.